Are there some things you just can't seem to get good at no matter how hard you try? Juggling, whistling, snapping your fingers, life? Well, lucky for you, you can get good at video games, and specifically retro video games. I mean, not really much doubt about beating a lot of modern games, so long as you know how to use a controller and have enough hours to play it, especially if the game offers to lower the difficulty. A lot of modern games feel designed like they want to make sure you see the end, but retro games don't care if you see their ending credits or not. Some almost seem like they assume nobody ever would. Known for their difficulty, at a certain point of hitting a wall repeatedly, the challenge presented in these older games can start to feel personal, like there has to be a winner and a loser. And when the game is beating you, well, let's just say you're not doing a whole lot of feeling like a winner. Now, if you want to change what it means to be a winner, there are certainly some other ways to come out on top. Not to mention adopting the "you're a winner if you're having fun" attitude, something I'm a big believer in. But here's the thing. For a lot of people, it's a lot easier to have fun when the game doesn't feel so hard. And especially if the reason the game doesn't feel so hard is because you're just that dang good at it. Or, perhaps some folks would settle for just simply not being terrible at them. One of the biggest deterrents of getting people into the hobby to begin with. It's a story I've encountered countless times. Somebody says, "I tried retro gaming, but I just couldn't get into it at all." To which the response is, "Well, were you terrible at them?" Answer, "Yeah, I was." Well, that's the problem. It can be hard to enjoy something if you're terrible at it. For example, like I said before, life. Okay, so first thing you want to do is evaluate your setup. You don't necessarily have to buy a bunch of expensive equipment either. That said, the main thing you want to get squared away is reducing the amount of input lag in your setup. What input lag is, for those who either don't know or enjoy a reminder, is the amount of time between when you press a button and when whatever is supposed to happen because you pressed that button actually happens. And as you might guess, having more time in between the two is not what you want. The old CRT tube TVs are well known for having little to none, but if you have a newer TV, you'll want to look up the model number and do a quick bit of online research to figure out how much it has. And I can't emphasize this enough. Turn on game mode, which most TVs have in their settings and will reduce the input lag. It costs you no money, I promise. If the amount of input lag on your TV seems bad, I typically recommend having 25 milliseconds or less. A real quick solution is to just use a computer monitor instead, which I'm guessing most people have at least one of lying around. They tend to have really good response times. The unfortunate thing is that when a lot of people are first getting into retro gaming, they do it on a modern display without game mode turned on, so an already tough game is made even harder by having delayed inputs without even realizing that's happening, which often results in what I feel is an unfair negative opinion of the game. And sure, not everyone is as sensitive to input lag as others, but if it's high enough, which on some TVs it can be, it will put you at a noticeable disadvantage. So your display matters. It's kind of like using an inadequate tool in a way, like cutting a banana with a spoon. You can do it, but what are you doing? Okay, so once you've got a relatively lag-free setup, the next thing you need is the right mindset. And no, I don't mean by listening to Eye of the Tiger before you tackle the turbo tunnel, something I may or may not do. What I mean is that you need to untrain your brain from thinking the way that mainstream modern video games have conditioned you to think. That is to say, don't expect so much mercy. I even found a knife in my drink one time that I'm pretty sure Ninja Gaiden put in there. In most more modern AAA games, when you fail or die, you pretty much start right back where you were with no consequences. Now, to be fair, this has gone away a little bit, in part due to the influence of retro games on modern games, as well as the influence from the Dark Souls series. And speaking of Dark Souls, it's a tough game, don't get me wrong, but I've always felt a big part of why its challenge shocked so many people is because they hadn't played something that unforgiving in a really long time, or if they were young enough, ever. By the way, who else decided to take out the dude at the first bonfire? Try to help me. This is what creepy giggling will get you, buddy. When I got back into retro gaming around 2010 or so, after having not really played games from the 80s or 90s for over 10 years, I was garbage at them. I couldn't even make it past the first or second level of some games. At least my mom still loved me, but a lot of the issue was that I was used to games being so forgiving. I had to change my mindset. Every time you get hit, it matters. Every life you lose matters. Every enemy you make it past matters. Every time you fail to realize you gotta take a screaming wee-wee because you're so focused in on the game, but you probably should just stop and go to the bathroom because it'll allow you to relax, it matters. When you play a retro game and every little thing matters, sure, it makes things a bit more tense, but it keeps you engaged in a way unlike more forgiving games do, and often makes the payoff for success feel far more satisfying. You can't even guess how proud of me everyone I know was the day I beat the Turbo Tunnel. Well, actually, you probably can because no one really cared or even knew what I was talking about, but you better believe it didn't stop me from spoiling myself silly. Of course, it takes more than just the right mindset when playing a retro game. A lot of it is just getting used to moving around on a 2D plane, something that will start to feel second nature with a little bit of time. But the biggest thing I see people having trouble with when they're having trouble playing retro games is defense. You know, that concept most gamers occasionally think about and then decide, screw it. Well, I'm here to defend defense. It gets ignored even though it should be so obvious. You've got to keep yourself alive and not just focus on attacking and charging forward. In a lot of modern games on the default difficulty, you can often get away with not even worrying about protecting yourself, at least for large chunks of the game. I recently played through Metroid Prime again, and believe me, I love this game, but I rarely ever worried about defending myself, instead focusing on just figuring out what I needed to be shooting and with which type of weapon. And when I did defend myself, it was basically just, okay, projectile coming in from far away, just remember to jump to the side in time. In retro games, you gotta be ready. I wake up in the middle of the night ready to jump over Castlevania's Medusa heads, but that's the thing, even something like the Medusa heads from Castlevania, notorious for having movement patterns that people find annoying, are predictable. That's the key. You gotta pay attention to patterns. Once you get familiar with the enemy patterns, it's way easier to react to them. It's just like anything in life. Got that one person who every time they call you, it's long and boring? Just don't answer. You can't just charge ahead either. At least not until you have a good idea of what's coming next. You'll want to think about how to best utilize your moveset to attack as well, and typically in a defensive way. When you put yourself into a position to attack something, you don't want to open yourself up too much to being vulnerable to getting hit. The idea is to set yourself up in a position so that you can quickly strike them and defeat them before they have a chance to hit you. Or if they require multiple hits, strike them quickly and then get the heck out of there before they have a chance to attack back. I can't tell you how often I see people jump into danger and then start attacking like crazy, all the while allowing the enemy or enemies to attack the bejesus out of them, and with seemingly no thoughts or plans to avoid those attacks. It's no wonder the invincibility cheats were so popular back in the day. Okay, so remember how I said that every time you get hit it matters and every life you lose matters? Well, technically there is a way around that: save states, which basically allow you to create a save point wherever you want and always be able to go back to that point as many times as you want. Want to see those sweet end credits again? You got it. What's nice about save states is that they're available on just about every single device you could possibly be playing retro games on. Even if you're using original hardware, there are some flash carts that give you the option to create save states, and also another option, while not as robust, but a lot of games have secret passwords or button combinations that will allow you to select which stage you want to play. But besides making the games more forgiving, if that's how you choose to play them, which, no judgment from me, the idea is to enjoy yourself. But besides that, it can be a good way to allow yourself to practice certain parts of a game that are especially challenging, or, goodness forbid, simply give yourself the opportunity to not have to beat the entire game in a single sitting. Oh, 2 a.m. means I should probably go to bed? But that about does it for my tips. If you've been struggling or would simply just like to get better, I think they'll work for you because they worked for me. Remember, like I said, I was complete trash at a lot of these games before I changed my mindset and approach. Made a huge difference. Oh, quick little bonus tip: never play on an empty stomach. Have a snack before. I could give you my personal suggestion, but main thing is to just choose whatever you enjoy. That said, I'm sure a lot of you watching have also had some breakthroughs of your own, of which I'd be curious to hear. So for that, or any other thoughts you may have, feel free to leave them in a comment, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's the retro